Good morning. My name is Ahmad Al-Qadi. I'm with the National Council of Canadian Muslims. We take time out while fasting during the holy month of Ramadan to come to Parliament Hill today to observe a debate in the House of Commons on a motion that has great significance for us and many Canadians, a motion to affirm Palestinian human rights. The people of Palestine have for decades lived under a military occupation that has denied them self-determination and basic human rights. In the past few months, Palestinian civilians of the Gaza Strip and beyond have suffered unprecedented rates of violence in the form of ongoing bombardment and a land invasion by the IDF. We have heard from hundreds of Palestinian Canadian families across Canada who have been grieving for family members who have been killed by Israeli airstrikes and gunfire. Many Palestinian Canadians have suffered the loss of their grandparents, their parents, their sisters, their brothers, their cousins, and their beloved loved ones. Many Palestinian Canadians in Canada have lost multiple generations of their entire family. Millions more lives are at risk of death due to indiscriminate bombing that has included the targeting of hospitals that has left many people without access to medicine or health care. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are at risk of dying of preventable disease and starvation as critical humanitarian aid is largely blocked by the IDF. The Israeli government's latest proposed military operation in the city of Rafah promises to have catastrophic consequences for more than 1 million people, mostly refugees displaced by the war, who are sheltering there. In addition to the ongoing attacks on civilians in Gaza, we are seeing ongoing violence against Palestinians in the West Bank at the hands of extremist Israeli settlers. Violent extremist settlers have killed hundreds of Palestinians, more than 350 people, including dozens of children, without being held accountable before the law. There must be accountability for all violations of international law on both sides. We want all hostages held by both sides to be released unharmed. With the return of Ramadan, we are also alarmed to see that the Netanyahu government has adopted new rules at our holiest time of year to limit the access of Muslims to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest places in Islam. This fresh provocation has been globally condemned, including by many of Netanyahu's own colleagues. In response to this humanitarian crisis, here in Canada, Muslims have called upon all of our MPs to firstly condemn the war crimes being committed by the Netanyahu government. Support an immediate ceasefire urgently needed to protect civilians sheltering in Rafah and beyond. Demand the immediate resumption of funding for UNRWA, a lifeline for millions of refugees. Oppose the flow of arms to the Netanyahu government, which, as confirmed by the ICJ, is engaged in plausible genocide, and stand up in defense of civil liberties, including the right of Canadians to express solidarity with the Palestinian people without fear of reprisal. I want to emphasize, as we go into this vote, we note that this government has taken some positive steps towards these common sense goals. We note the progress this government has made in taking a number of positive steps on the above asks, but today's vote will be a critical point to demonstrate whether words will match actions. Many Canadians have been hurting watching the unfolding disaster in Gaza. They are angry and frustrated. We need to do everything we can as a country to end the carnage. And let us be unequivocally and absolutely clear, there is a plausible genocide happening right before our eyes. That's why we are looking forward to seeing the government solidify their stance in relation to human rights by positively voting on this motion. The Canadian Muslim community is watching, the Palestinian Canadian community is watching. Canadians from all over the nation are watching carefully to see the results of this vote. We call on all members of Parliament, regardless of party, to recognize that human rights should never be a partisan issue, to stand together as Canadians, to do everything that we can do to contribute to a just peace for Palestinians and Israelis alike, for their human rights and democratic freedoms to be respected by all. Thank you.
Can you just each name yourself, please?
Oh, sure. Okay. Good morning. My name is Miranda Gallo, and I'm the Government Relations Manager with Islamic Relief Canada. Over the past week, many of Canada's leading humanitarian agencies have been reaching out to members of Parliament from all political stripes and backgrounds, urging them to find common ground on the NDP motion that will be presented in the House today. Islamic Relief has been working on the ground in Palestine since 1997. We have witnessed countless bombardments, poverty, and suffering on a mass scale for decades. But yet, the scale and the gravity of this crisis is unprecedented. To date, over 31,000 Palestinians have been killed. 9,000 of them were women, and 13,000 were children. Gaza is on the brink of a mass and imminent famine, according to UN experts, with 1 in 4 Palestinians currently at risk of starvation. The majority of the population is displaced, diseases are spreading in overcrowded shelters, and families are sleeping in flooded streets. We know, as my colleague just mentioned, that the ICJ has gone so far as to declare that the situation constitutes plausible genocide. For the first time in our history, our humanitarian mandate has been effectively impeded by Israel's total siege. The amount of food, fuel, medicine, and vital aid being allowed entry into Gaza is a tiny drop in the ocean of what is required under international law, what's needed and required. This situation is both unacceptable and preventable. As humanitarian actors, we are seeking out decision makers at the highest levels to uphold international law and prevent an even further catastrophe from taking place. Today's motion is a critical moment that will demonstrate Canada's commitment to humanitarian principles and a rules-based international order. This motion reflects many of the issues that we have raised with the Canadian government over several months now. Since October, we have consistently urged the Canadian government to call for an immediate ceasefire and unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza. We have urged our government to hold all parties to account for violations of international law and to support international justice mechanisms. We have continually called on Canada to take a principled stance to uphold human rights in the Middle East. And at this moment, we believe that this begins with the suspension of arms exports that are contributing to the conflict. The situation in Gaza is urgent and requires an urgent response. This motion should not be treated as a partisan issue or as a matter of politics, but of principle and universal values. All peoples, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or religion, deserve to live in peace and dignity and have access to their basic human rights. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Essam Abu-Oshaibah. I'm a Palestinian Canadian from Gaza with a couple of decades in political organizing in Ottawa and in the region. I'll keep my notes short because I think Ahmed and Miranda have talked to many of the points. And my focus on the motion, the community hopes and aspiration for a peace, justice, and end of occupation lie in many of the things that that has been put forth in this motion. Support for this motion will not only mean support for the Palestinian community, but it's a win for all those who believe that over 14,000 children should have not been killed indiscriminately. It's a win for those who believe that 10 children a day should not be losing their limbs due to indiscriminate bombing. It's a win for those who want peace in the region and an end to the war being waged by the Netanyahu government. A vote against this motion supports the status quo. It supports ongoing war. It supports the injustices with no end in sight for the Palestinian suffering amidst the ongoing ethnic cleansing. The status quo of occupation injustice must end. Palestinian Canadians are watching carefully. Likewise, the Arab Canadians and Muslim Canadians as well, to see who is on the right side of history. Let me remind you, as we remember ex-Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, Canada under the progressive conservative Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and Foreign Minister Joe Clark, unlike US and UK, boldly stood up against the apartheid in South Africa. Isn't it time now for the Liberal government to do the same against the apartheid of our time? Or will the government sadly fail the test of the history and bring disgrace to the people of Canada? Canada recognized Israel without a defined border. Isn't it fair that Canada do the same for Palestine and help establish a homeland for Palestinian people who at the moment, at this moment of time, are the most oppressed people in the world? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Israa Alsaafin. I'm a Palestinian Canadian from Gaza. as many of the media have heard my story in the past, and as I have time and time again poured my heart out and repeated it, I will not share it again today. I, however, want to say this. When I first moved to Canada, I came with a vision in my mind. I arrived in Canada thinking that is the country that above all else holds human rights and upholding peace at the highest standard. I have heard the phrase that Canadian is a peacekeeping nation so much. I thought by coming here I would be living in a country that did the things that others praised it for. I came with hope. Although that hope has been shattered for the past few months, I stand here today with a glimmer of the same hope I came once with. Today, Canada has a chance to choose peace, choose human rights, and to choose to be a peacekeeping nation once again. As I live in this country, I'm a part of its history, and I will remember the stance our leaders took today, just like history will remember. And those of you watching, you too are also a piece of history, and you must remember today. I'm hopeful that our leaders will not disappoint Canada or its people who wished for peace and for human rights to be upheld. But I will refuse to let my guard down. For as long as my people in Gaza and all across Palestine bleed, I will bleed with them. Cry, and I will cry with them. And I will call for justice with them. Thank you.
Tell Israa and Sam's first and last name and where each of you, if you're visiting from Ottawa or another city.
So my first name is Israa, I-S-R-A-A. Last name Alsaafin, A-L-S-A-A-F-I-N. I'm a resident of Ontario, Ottawa. I live in Ottawa and came from Gaza in 2012. 12.
My name is Essam, so the spelling is E-S-S-A-M, and the last name is A-B-U-O-S-H-A-I-B-A-H, Essam Abu-Oshaibah. I live in Ottawa as well.
We can take questions now.
D'abord, est-ce que quelqu'un d'entre vous parle français?
Je comprends français, mais je suis pas sûre si j'ai le vocabulaire, mais je vais essayer mon mieux.
Si la motion est rejetée par les députés aujourd'hui, de quelle façon est-ce que vous croyez que ça va changer la situation sur le terrain à Gaza?
Je pense que c'est une importante étape, juste pour dire que le Canada a la position que le droit international est important, que le Canada n'est pas sur le mauvais... sorry, my French is kind of bad. But basically, maybe even is English okay? Or, okay. Yeah, if it passes, I think it's symbolic to show that Canada will see the degree of commitment to human rights generally and international law, and how seriously we're willing to implement international law. As a country, there's only so much that we can do to influence the situation. But what we can do is contained in that motion. We can recognize Palestinian self-determination, which is part of our policy for a two-state solution. We can cease our arms export permits. That's within our control until there is a respect for international law. We can uphold basic principles and international justice mechanisms. So today is really a test to see if Canada is willing to respect humanitarian principles and international law.
Juste pour continuer sur la question de mon collègue.
Oui.
Qu'est-ce que ça changerait un vote contre? Est-ce que ça changerait quoi que ce soit?
Je pense que ça pourrait changer la situation, nos politiques en général. Peut-être les autres pays vont changer leur position quand on a décidé de faire une position pour le cessez-le-feu, par exemple. Le cessez-le-feu. Des autres pays suivait le Canada à le temps. Alors, peut-être c'est la même chose ici avec la recognition d'un pays palestinien et puis aussi avec des armes pour cesser, pour arrêter le soldat.
Si c'est un vote pour, mais si c'est un vote contre,
Oui, oh,
est-ce que ça
excusez-moi.
a des
Oui.
conséquences ou pas?
Je pense que ça veut dire que le Canada n'est pas sérieux concernant les droits humains et les droits palestiniens. Je pense que ça va être indiqué que qu'est-ce qu'on parle et pas qu'on marche. Like it's the what we're saying. Maybe it's not what we're walking when it push comes to shove. When there's a vote, if we can't stand for basic principles, I think it says something.
One of the arguments we hear from those who might oppose the motion is that it is not up to the Canadian Parliament to decide whether or not there is a Palestinian state. This should be negotiated. And what do you make of that argument? And I'd like to hear some of you also.
Yeah, I'm going to pass this to my colleague, Ahmed.
So, obviously, negotiations, self-determination should belong to the people who live in that land. So, self-determination for the Palestinian people should belong for the Palestinian people. However, when our country, when our government's policy is in support of a two-state solution, then we should vote for those motions that align with it. The point of today is not that tomorrow the carnage is going to stop. Make no mistake, if the motion is supported today, if hopefully the motion is passed, that does not mean the killing is going to stop in Gaza. 10 children tomorrow will still lose their limbs. But the point of today is a symbolic stance that our country is taking, that Canada is taking, that it supports international law, that it supports and believes in human rights and building peace between nations. Next question.
If I may ask, another criticism is that supporting this kind of motion now would be akin to rewarding Hamas for their terrorist attack on October 7th. What do you make of that criticism? How do you respond to it?
I mean, they're welcome to make that criticism, but if our country believes in respecting humanitarian law, believes in respecting international law, and believes in respecting human rights, then this is the path forward. Our nation, every single government leader cannot stand and say that they support they support the creation of a Palestinian state. And then when it comes to take action on it, or at least vote on a motion, they back away and say that this isn't something that's going to work out. I think that's all for today. Thank you all for coming. If you wish to ask questions, you can reach us on our social media or website. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. No, we just like to conclude. This is the conclusion of our press conference, but we're open to responding to questions online and other ways. I know, but no, but we must conclude our press conference right now. We apologize. Sorry?
You're not telling us why you have to conclude, because usually in the press conference here, equal time for presentation and questions need to be respected, and you knew the rule before you came in. We had a 15-minute at least of presentation. You need to stay for 15 minutes of questions.
No, I understand that. We're just in a rush to head to another meeting, so we'll conclude for today. But, however, our lines are open to answer questions in the future. Thank you very much.